Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Elevating Your Life. I am Paula Vail, your host. I am going to share an absolute fascinating lady with you today. I have been so excited for this interview. We have with us today Lesley Lupo. She has been a professional intuitive since 1994, a gifted healer, NLP specialist, and near-death experiencer. She has a unique, rare gift of being able to explain the science behind intuition and spiritual phenomenon. After being killed by a stampede of horses, her profound near-death experience resulted in her writing her amazing book, Remember, Every Breath is Precious. Dying Taught Me How to Live. Oh, I so loved the book. Oh, welcome, Lesley. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm honored and so thrilled to share you and your story and your wisdom with my audience. Well, first off, tell us about this happening of the horses and your NDE. Tell us about that.
Well, it happened at a time in my life when I didn't have a spiritual component to my life. An actual, in real life, I was borderline atheist, and I was working at a dude ranch. I had gone down to grab a couple horses that had run down to the hay barn with their saddles on. And I felt really excited because they were standing right next to each other in a group of about 80 horses, and they were side to side. And I tried to wiggle between them to get up to their heads. And what happened was I popped out of my body, my consciousness. Now, I know now that it was my soul, but at that time I was totally flabbergasted because I had no idea why my consciousness was standing 20 feet away watching me struggle between the horses. So all of a sudden, one of the horses screamed and a stampede started, and I watched myself fight and scream for my life. And I watched myself get kicked around and then slammed into the hay barn and dropped like a sack of potatoes. The interesting thing was I didn't feel anything. I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous. I felt this incredible level of serenity and peacefulness that radiated from this experience. I was still astonished because I didn't know what was going on, but I felt like so much love, and I felt like this was just the way you let go of it was like taking off a body girdle that was 4 sizes too small. I felt refreshed and incredibly electric. And then I transitioned to another place, and I didn't go through a tunnel of light like people talk about sometimes, but Tucson just faded and this other world came into view. So that was the transition. Very peaceful. Now, if someone had watched me die, they would have said I had suffered, but I had no suffering. I just felt peaceful and like refreshed.
Wow. And
like, phew, get that out of the way.
That just, and hearing that just brings me so much hope and joy in the fact that, when people, animals, pass from something, heartbreaking, that it sounds like their soul, their higher self had already left the body. Would you say?
Yes. They are not feeling it. The body, in fact, I had a client write me a letter. Her mom was dying and of a stroke. It took 2 full days. And she was holding her hand. And finally she said, Mom, I know you're not in the body. And she felt on the back of her hair, her mom would always muss her hair. And she felt that. And she looked around and there was no vents. And so she said, okay, Mom, that was you. And it happened again. She said, you're dancing around the room right now. You don't feel what's going on. And that gives a lot of people a lot of peace to know that the body is suffering, but the soul has separated and is watching it. You know, a lot of people have reported that in the near-death experiences, that they were watching themselves die, like in an operating room or in a car accident. And it's nice to know that it's a peaceful transition.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. That is so amazing. And that is so wonderful to have that perception and know that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, when you were out, so how long would you say you were out of your body?
Well, when we tried to track it afterwards, I'd gone down to get the horses at 10 to 3. And when I popped back in, it was about 10 after 3. So we're figuring I was dead for about 12 or 14 minutes. According to the people that were trying to resuscitate me, they had given up. They just stopped and said, get a blanket, because they felt I was gone. And I wasn't. I was upstairs, you know. And it's funny because when I came back, I knew I had gone someplace. It wasn't a dream. At the same time, I couldn't use the word heaven because I was so still stuck on my atheism, agnosticism. So I called it upstairs, just until I could research it and figure out what happened. Because this was 1988. There wasn't a lot of information around. But when I was upstairs, the most important thing, the first thing, I was inundated with so much love. I felt everything around me was giving me love. And I felt that same love coming out of my heart, pouring out over everything I looked at. And then I noticed that I didn't have that hardwired fear factor that we have. You know, my degree was in developmental psychology, and I like to study the brain. And we have what's called the animal brain, the fight or flight reflex. And I noticed it was completely gone. There wasn't a trace of it. I was in a place I had no idea where I was. And yet I felt such love and joy and celebration. And, you know, then I went through some talks in which I was told I had a choice. I could stay up there or I could come back to Earth. And me being me, I had to ask a lot of questions, you know, like, well, what do I do up here? And what do I do if I go back? You know, and I took some time because they said, kind of, you have to get used to being here. It was interesting because on Earth, when I was just in my soul, I felt so electric and alive, and all my senses were heightened to the point where I felt like I had been muffled before. But when I got upstairs at first, I felt very groggy. And I think it just seems to be a transition in like a vibration, you know, an energy level. You know, there's a lot of energies that are around us, or even colors and sounds that we can't see, and sounds we can't hear. So upstairs, it was like the whole thing is there, and it was just so amazing.
When, you know, and many of us have wondered, when you are upstairs, do you sense any deceased loved ones, or do you sense certain beings, like, let's say, Archangel Michael, or is it basically just feeling very loved?
I didn't see any of my family because I wasn't 100% there. I was in like a transition state. At one point, I remember asking and saying, I feel there's things I can't quite see yet. And they said, well, you're not here yet. You have to make the choice. So there may have been loved ones of my family. I saw what a lot of people talk about God or the source as the source, and a lot of religions talk about this unmanifested consciousness. And I saw that, and this consciousness was very aware of who I was and adored me. I talked to Jesus. I talked to Saraswati, who's the goddess of knowledge, and she was in a library, which I guess is a place I hang out upstairs. So I did have some very strong indicators. They also showed me a scene in which my soul family had decided to be incarnating and go into this area to come back down to earth to help. And at that point, I saw an angel. And it's like they're so blurry with light and this radiance. So I did see the angel when they were showing me how I had volunteered to come down.
Oh, that is so amazing. I love that. I love that you were in the upstairs library, the waiting room. Oh my gosh. That is a beautiful description. Oh my gosh.
Well, it's like all the answers of consciousness. And it's interesting because consciousness is growing and expanding. And it's I think that's one of the most amazing things I saw upstairs, was that learning was as joyous as leisure is on earth. Learning upstairs is just as joyous and relaxing. And that I didn't get the sense that we came down to earth as a punishment for bad karma, as much as the immortal soul wants to come down to grow, to learn and grow, and then come down here and take it. And this is like a testing place. And there's a lot of different realms too, because I remember at one point when I was looking at this source, I noticed that I could almost see through a glass ceiling and see another realm above it, at which point I was told, yes, there are many realms. And I was like, okay, because see, everything makes sense when you're upstairs. They tell you something, you don't ask any more questions because you know. And then I'm back on earth and I'm trying to make sense of it. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could ask him more questions about that, because I don't remember what he meant. What did he mean by that? You just laugh, go, yeah, okay, it makes sense. Well, then you come back here, it doesn't make sense,
Can you explain that a little further, please? Can I just email you?
Yeah, really.
Oh.
I just have a couple of questions.
Yes. Well, how would you describe what this has given you as a concept of karma and our soul's growth?
Well, what I was shown was my soul group. If I was going to stay, my soul group had a very specific job. And what we were doing is we were placing these enlightened beings, are called bodhisattvas. And most of those go into families that see that the child has a spiritual calling, and they find the appropriate teachers. But my group was working with what I have come to call the blindfolded bodhisattvas, or Houdini kids, based on a documentary I saw about Houdini, which has to do with coming down and going into a much younger family and being exposed to a lot of hatred and prejudice, because they are the ones that have been coming down since the mid 1800s to break the chain of generational prejudice. And another thing I was shown was that between the years of about 1940 to about 1975, there was a huge inundation of these elders coming down to facilitate a change for more, so that equality is based on oneness, not sameness. So we're moving from that tribal herd animal thinking to all humans are God's children. So this is moving from fear of differences to enjoyment of differences and being secure in my own self, that I can look at all these different pathways and enjoy them rather than say one of these pathways is right and it's got to be me, so you're wrong. It's just, it's a lot more collaboration. And you see that. I saw an article in Smart Money a few years ago, and they were talking about how cooperative businesses now are more making more money for more people in the business than a competitive business, you know. And a lot of people who have sales teams, instead of giving one prize to one person, the top person, which fosters competition on the team, they're saying, okay, here's your goal. And if you all reach this goal, you all win a prize.
Yes.
And some people have had 30 and 40% higher sales because instead of fighting with each other, they're cooperating with each other. And that fosters that unity.
I love that. I have to share a little story that so reminds me. For many years, I was a restaurant manager and owner, a large Italian restaurant. And a new restaurant opened across the street from my restaurant. It was a steakhouse, and I wanted to welcome them to the neighborhood and support them. So one night I took a whole bunch of my employees over there and we had dinner. And I, introduced myself to the owner and this and that. And he was like, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" "I want to support you and welcome you." And he just couldn't believe it. He was like, "No, you're my competition." And I was like, no, no, we're totally different. We can support each other.
Yeah. That's so funny. I grew up in a Sicilian family with a restaurant business. We'll have to talk later.
Yes. Yep. I've always said everyone should work in a restaurant. You learn so much and so many skills. I love
you learn so much. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Chaos.
Oh my goodness. Now, something in your book that was mentioned, some people who have NDEs wind up with 1 foot on earth and 1 foot in the spirit world. Tell us a little more about that. That just fascinated me.
I think that most people that have NDEs would be classified as that simply because we're completely aware of our immortal soul. And when I do a lecture on my NDE, at the very end, I draw a little picture on a piece of paper. Always got to, because I draw a lot when I'm speaking. And it's a chocolate little truffle. And then I say, this is the immortal soul. It is only love. And then I draw a little wrapper around it. I said, this is a crinkly wrapper. This is the human consciousness. This is the fight or flight reflex that protects the little soft chocolate truffle. You're both of these, but you are the immortal soul. So when we have a fight or flight reflex, we can pause for a second and just say, that's not me, because fight or flight is fear and the chocolate truffle is love. So we can say, what does my love want to do? Instead of slapping someone, we might want to think of a different way to put our information out there. And I've had people ask me, does this make me a doormat? And I always say, no, a doormat is a fear reflex. But if you recognize, sometimes people that are deeply spiritual feel very upset that they still have those impulses, but that's just the wrapper. This is just the wrapper. And as long as we're in this wrapper, we're going to have that. And when we're conscious, we say, that's not me. Oh, there's that silly reflex again, and what does my heart want to do? What does my spirit want to do? And it will keep you strong, but it will also keep you out of emitting bad energy, because whatever we throw out, we have to pick up. So it's learning to work with good karma instead of working with bad karma.
I love that. Whatever we throw out, we'll have to pick up. Oh my gosh. I love that. That is so true. And just the fact that to realize that we do have these reflexes, but we don't have to go that direction. We can say,
No,
okay,
just a
I'm going to
reflex.
choose love. That's
Right.
huge, Lesley.
Well, it's just a reflex. I have two big dogs. I have a little tiny farm and I have a couple big dogs because we have, coyotes and stuff. And someone had come to the house to deliver something, and my dogs were come next to me because I'm their mom. And
Mhm.
one of them just started doing a little low growl because it was someone that they hadn't seen before. And it was just kind of little warning. That's our nature in the human, is to be protective of something we don't know and be negative towards it. And again, I just patted him on the head and I said, no, no, honey, it's okay. And that's what we have to learn to do with our impulses, is just take a breath and say, is that love? No, it's not. So then that's my fear reflex. What does my love want to do? And again, your love will never throw you under the bus or make you be a doormat to anyone. That's not love, that's fear.
Mhm.
There's always a pathway of dignity for both. And if there isn't, then you need to walk away from that person. I
Yes,
mean, we have to include ourselves in our decisions a bit.
yes, yes. Oh, that is so huge. Fear or love. And love will protect us.
Yeah,
Love will, oh my gosh, love will do so
love
much for
is
us.
always, we love ourselves. Exactly.
Oh
Exactly.
gosh, this is so fascinating. You are just so amazing, Lesley. I'm just so grateful. Oh, with having before we go into our last minutes of the show, will you please tell everyone how they can learn more about you, get a copy of your book, share everyone with that, your information.
Okay. My name is just Lesley, Lesley, not IE. LesleyJoanLupo.com is my webpage. And I've got a lot of information about the Houdini kids and my book, and a lot of exercises. I have a lot of information there so that people can begin to find that balance and get some of that impulse control and just be more objective. It's not being pessimistic, it's just being objective. So it's lesleyjoanlupo.com. There's a link to my book that you can get on Amazon, and that's called Remember Every Breath is Precious. Because that's the last thing they said to me before I came back. When I was coming back, it felt like I was being squeezed into a sausage casing and I felt uncomfortable, which shocked me because it was in heaven. And I went, oh, and they stopped it and they said, you don't have to go back. And I thought, no, I will. And that's when Rao, one of my soul group, leaned forward and said, remember, every breath is precious. And that is always stuck with me. The gratitude of every breath is precious.
Oh, that is so beautiful. With our last few minutes, Lesley, I mean, everything you've said has been just amazing and profound. What last words do you want to leave with everyone today before we say goodbye?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me was understanding that the world is a one-room schoolroom, which means there's a lot of young souls here that don't quite get it yet. It's not possible to teach calculus to a first grader, and to remember that there's a beautiful saying, when the student is ready, the master appears. Well, if you're sharing information with someone and they're not getting it, then you're not the teacher and they're not ready. And you can bless them and move on. And the other thing is, for all the people who are considered empaths or highly sensitive people, look into that Houdini kid idea, because these blindfolded bodhisattvas have a very hard time with anger and raging people or violent movies and things. And if you had a tragic childhood, it wasn't because you were a monster in the previous life and you have to know what beating a child is like, because you didn't do it. You came in to absorb it and to forgive. And that's one of the most important things that shifts consciousness is Houdini kids come in to break the chain of generational teachings of prejudices and to elevate total forgiveness to a very high level. Because they are so forgiving, they get victimized a lot until they begin to add themselves to their decisions. Like, is this in my highest good too? Not only, but too.
So they make the choice and they agree to come into this life. And,
Yes.
our life gives us challenges. So we've made the choices for that, but it actually benefits us in the end, right? The
Right.
growth and the love.
Yes, but once you realize who you are, oh my gosh, I'm a bodhisattva that's just blindfolded to my history. It brings a lot of peace. And actually, the other thing that these blindfolded bodhisattvas have to learn is how to play, because so many of them see suffering and pain and they feel, I can't sit down to eat until everyone is fed in the world. And that's kind of like a Houdini kid. So they have to learn to take care of themselves too, because they can be selfless to a fault. And we want to be selfless, but not to the point where we're victimized, because Houdini kids will attract narcissists and what we call in psychology the martyr complex, that no matter what you do for them, keep making the mistake because the attention. So it's just very simple. Include yourself in your decisions. Is this in my highest good too? That's, if it's not, then it's not in their highest good either.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, that is a powerful message. Oh, Lesley, this has been so fantastic. I could go on for an hour with you. This is great.
Well,
We may have to get together again.
yeah, we may. It depends on the questions you get,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
I'll come back anytime you want.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to the audience for joining us. I'm so grateful. If you're listening to this on audio, you can see the actual video at patreon.com/Paula Vail. I am so grateful for you. Love, hugs, and blessings. Lesley, love, hugs, and blessings. And thank you for gracing us with your beautiful energy and wisdom.
It's been an honor to be invited. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.